All right. Just making sure I have a couple last things adjusted here. And that should be good. So, hello everyone. Fan2403, and we're here to give you another um, XRS Bi-weekly update. And I'm technically behind on this. This was supposed to be a stream for last weekend because every 2 races we run, I'm supposed to give that stream. So technically, I am 1 race behind. To make up for it, or to make sure these streams, at least when you watch them, are still on schedule, I'm not going to be talking about the race that we just ran at Indianapolis. So I'm only going to be talking about what happened in races 5 and race 6. Yeah, Indianapolis, that will be for the next stream that I will try to get started as quickly as I can right after we finish next week's race at Eagle Rock Club Circuit, which hopefully that race will be interesting. And race 7 in Indianapolis was exciting, and I'll cut myself out there. So this is mainly going over races 5 and race 6. Race 5, we ran our first Mercury race at Eagle Rock. And Eagle Rock, it's just one of those tracks. Hello, Razor. I see you in the chat. Eagle Rock is just one of those tracks that it is flat out short track racing, and it is not something that we are used to in Forza. It's not something that we're used to in Forza, and the package needs to be done right and everything like that. We did hear a lot of complaints on the package. Like it was inconsistent, it was too tight getting in the corners, and way snappy loose on exit. I'm here to tell everyone right now, this was intentional. So, for the car to break that loose exiting the corner and to be that tiny bit inconsistent, this was purposely done. The package was purposely made this way because Eagle Rock cannot be ran like Homestead or Indianapolis. Eagle Rock is a short track, and short track racing is something that we're just not used to in Forza. And short track racing, we haven't had in XRS literally at all. The closest that we got was when we were back on Motorsport 7. The closest that we got was running Top Gear, the Top Gear triangle track, so the Top Gear West Reverse, essentially mini Pocono. That was the closest that we got to short track racing. And for those who might remember the packages that we ran at Top Gear West Reverse, they were purposely made to be really hard to drive. The car had okay brakes while also needing to be really loose. So whenever we tried to incorporate short track racing, we really try to emphasize the short track racing aspect of it, which the car is going to have okay brakes, and the car is pretty much is going to be loose on exit. It's going to be hard to drive. And so that should be the expectation of Eagle Rock going forward, no matter what series we're running on. Okay, no matter what series, as long as it's a NASCAR series, I should say. So if it's a NASCAR series and we're running Eagle Rock Oval, you gotta expect the car is going to be harder to drive. And that's really only going to be a track-specific thing. Because if you try to make a easy-to-drive car at Eagle Rock, where you can just slam the throttle off the corner, you're going to end up with really tight racing, and you're going to end up with guys not making the corner and hitting the wall on corner exit, quite literally almost every lap. And that's just something that you don't want. So you want the car to be a little bit harder to drive, so then it spreads out the field a little bit more and allows you, the driver, to have more control of your car. So, yeah, Eagle Rock Oval, is if it's a NASCAR series, expect what we're doing going forward to have that car be a little bit harder to drive. Nonetheless, it was still a solid race. There was still some solid racing throughout the pack. And I do have allergies, so you're going to hear me do that every so now and then. RZX JJ Reds ended up winning the race, but that wasn't before we had a lot of lead changes towards the end of the race. Eagle Rock, the leader tends to get passed around a lot. And right there at the end, everybody was all gas, not lifting. If you mess up in the corner, nope, you mess up, I'm going to hit you in the back. So there was a lot of pushing and shoving at the end of that Eagle Rock race, and we had a little bit of a rough start. And we actually got pretty close to the race being a tire management / fuel management race. We got really close if it wasn't for a late race caution that kind of brought the field back together a little bit and allowed guys to pit and recoup. That was pretty much the gist of that, to where it was a little bit of a rough start. We knew it was going to be maybe a lap or two before we saw the first yellow, because there are so many people who like Eagle Rock, and there are so many people who hate Eagle Rock, that the racing is going to be all over the place. So after we got those first couple cautions out of the way, we had a long green flag run in the middle of the race. It was such a long green flag run that a lot of people were wondering about tires and fuel. A lot of people were wondering, wait a minute. If I'm running right now, if the race goes green to the end, we would have had guys who were going to have no tire left. They would have no tire, they're running on very little grip, and some guys were then a little concerned about fuel. Maybe they're like, they have plenty of tire, but they don't know if they're going to have enough fuel. So it turned into a huge strategy call towards the end of the race, but ultimately, after the field got regrouped, a couple guys went to pit road. It made JJ Reds on top and the winner for Eagle Rock Race 5. Then we move on to our second road course race of the season, Race 6 at Mid-Ohio. Mid-Ohio, another track where a lot of people are going to say what they say. Some people hate Mid-Ohio, other people enjoy Mid-Ohio, simply because it's another track that's a little different to Forza, and of course different to XRS and NASCAR in general, because, well, in NASCAR, they do run. Oh, and now Cart responds to me in Discord. I can do it in about an hour. Well, the stream's already up, Cart. Well, there's that. Anyway. So we ran 45 laps in Ohio. We ran the full configuration, so not the shortened one that doesn't include the, I think it's called the paperclip corner. Pretty much turn 2. Turn 2 was that big roundabout corner. I don't quite remember the name of it, but yeah, so we ran the full configuration, and the racing at Mid-Ohio was actually pretty good. For a lot of people saying, oh, I don't like this track, I don't like the tune, I don't like this car, the racing was actually really good at Mid-Ohio. We had a couple unfortunate events. I know MVP, he was making a late race run to the front, and MVP had a real shot of getting that top 3 or victory, but ultimately he lagged out of the race. So we know there was that unfortunate mishap for him. There was a lot of interesting strategy calls. We had some guys who thought they had enough tire, other guys they didn't have enough tire. And the racing, it got all over the place to a point of, on a restart, I I was in the front row because was already in the back, but I already went to pit road, and the entire field pretty much went to pit road. So there was quite a bit of that for a couple yellows in a row for a couple cautions that we had towards the end of the race, because you, once again, when you have that long green flag run after a series of yellows, you're going to have people who might not have enough tire to the end, they might not have enough fuel to the end, and that was pretty much what was happening all throughout the middle of Mid-Ohio. But overall, the track is hard. The track is really hard. I would say it's probably on the level of... It has the difficulty of Sonoma, but it also has the technical, like how technical you need to be as Road America. So Road America is seen as an easy but at the same time difficult road course because of how technical you need to be. And Sonoma, there's no real long straightaways at Sonoma. Even if you're running the short circuit, the longest straightaways are right after the S's at the top of the hill. After you make that turn, I believe that's turn 6-ish, somewhere around there. But you make that 90-degree right-hander, and then you have another long straightaway leading into another series of S's. So those are really the only straightaways at Sonoma, and that's why it's seen as such a difficult road course, but it's a fun road course. Road America, you have many long straightaways. Obviously, the front stretch being the second longest. The longest is actually the back stretch leading into Canada Corner. And then you have a decently long straightaway in between turns 1 and 2. But then in between turns 2 and 3, you have another really long straightaway leading into a heavy braking zone, 90-degree corner, left-hander. So Road America, you do have those good series of straightaways. But once you actually get into the technical portion of the track, really Sector 2 leading into the uphill on the Corvette corner, that corner onward is so technical for how you need to be, your throttle inputs, how much braking pressure are you using, and really leading all the way in that carousel, in that loop. You have to be super technical in that portion of the course. But then Sector 3, which I pretty much categorize Sector 3 as the kink on the backstretch. Until the line. Canada Corner itself is not bad. The little left-hand kink is kind of the most difficult one. And then as long as you have the right entry and right throttle input on the last corner, that is really what's setting you up for good acceleration on the main straight. Oh, and I see Nizrama followed. Thank you, sir. And Mid-Ohio, you really only have 3 straightaways. So you have the front stretch, you have in between turns 1 and 2, and then you have in between turns 2 and 3. Those are the really only straightaways. You do have a couple hard braking zones still leading up into these straightaways, but the second and third sectors at Mid-Ohio, you're shifting the car's weight around so much, you need to have very careful throttle input, and you're really setting up your car for so many corners about a turn or two before you even reach that corner. You need to set up your car for it. So, and it's such a skinny track that you can't really go too wide, but a lot of people are going to be impatient towards the end of the race, and they're going to try and make up positions for track position. And it just leads to a whole slew of commotion, and that's what ended up happening in some portions of the race. But overall, the racing was actually really good. At Mid-Ohio, at the end of that race, Vanquish ended up on top. So Vanquish, he returned to victory lane there. And now we have it to where here's the big thing. We have now ran 7 races as of this stream, but I'm only talking about the first 6. Through the first 6 races has been 6 different winners. And the 7th race, we did not have a repeat winner. It was still a different winner. So, I won Daytona. I won Daytona. Optimal Mantis won Homestead. Frodo won the first Indianapolis race. Then Razor won Indy Road Course, race 4 in that doubleheader. Race 5 was won by RZX JJ Reds, and race 6 was won by Vanquish. And then race 7, even though I'll go into more detail of what happened during the race, race 7 was won by Kart Racer. So, 7 races, 7 different winners. The next time I do this stream, it will be after we run race 8 at Eagle Rock in the club circuit. And if we have a different winner after that, that is just going to shake up this playoffs so much. Because I can show you guys, or I can tell you guys the standings. Here, let me... Because I have the standings up until after race 6. Obviously, race 7, we're still going through if we got any penalty clips sent into us and stuff like that. And so we're still on the lookout if we need to review anything. I can tell you right now there probably will be a handful of penalties. Only from what happened late race and some people sending in clips to us. But also just going into a little further in-depth into it. So, if we see here, Razor, this is after race 6, so not including the race last night. Razor is in the points lead, and he has a huge points lead. Razor has a 79-point lead over Frodo. Razor has 5 top 5s, 5 top 10s. Frodo is 4-4. Razor also has the most playoff points. Razor has 9 playoff points to Frodo's 4. And so there's a 79-point gap between Razor and Frodo. But then the gaps after that are very different. So the gap between second and third is only a 2-point gap. So it goes from first to second, 79 points, but then second to third, only 2 points. And then third to fourth, only 5 points. Fourth to fifth, only 7 points. Fifth to sixth, another 7 points. And then sixth and seventh going into the next, going into race 7 were tied. Race Peasant and Kart Racer, they were tied right on the cut line. And the only reason why Race Peasant was ahead of Kart is because he had a higher average finishing position. So the way that we work around ties is first we go to wins. Neither one of them had a win after race 6. Neither one of them had a win. But then afterwards, we go to average finishing position. And average finishing position, Ray's barely has a higher finishing position with Kart. Kart has 8.83 after race 6, and then Ray's after race 6 had an 8.5. Okay, so after that difference, it really made it to where, okay, they're tied at the cut line, and then Kart has a 30-point lead over Rocket. It's nuts the way that this is all going to work out, because now after this race I can only imagine that where people finished, because I know some of the front runners, they finished in the back, others finished towards the front. Razor, I actually don't know where Razor finished. I just know he had like a spin coming to the white flag that he saved, but I don't quite exactly know where Razor finished. Razor, if you're still watching, do you remember where you finished? Frodo, he was up there, but yeah, he was up there in like the top cluster of cars. Exiv, he, I think, fell behind. I finished second. Neo, I know, got caught in a late race incident. Raze, I actually have no clue where Raze was. I want to say he was towards the back or the middle. I don't quite remember. Then Kart won the race. Rocket, Did Rocket lag out? Yeah, I think he lagged out. Okay, and then so Razor finished seventh. So he finished seventh. Uh, Rewar, Sly, Culture, Adam, Cam Black, Crazy Fools, RZX Cam, Vanquish, King Cameron, Optimal, JJ. Hmm. So the other thing is too, we have three drivers who have won a race: Vanquish, Optimal, and JJ. JJ, I know he hasn't made that many starts, but Optimal literally stopped racing after he won his race. Okay, and Rocket did lag out. But Optimal Mantis, he won Homestead Race 2, and he hasn't been here since then. So that's interesting. I don't know if Optimal literally doesn't have the time anymore, or he decided, you know what, I got my win, I'm out. So I don't know what's going on with that. So the races going forward can shake up the points even more, because we have a very first time Eagle Rock Club circuit next week. So I'm assuming the road racers are going to prevail in that race. I have no clue. Then we have race 9, Road America, which is obviously a road race that a lot of people are going to have confidence in. But then we go to race 10, the cutoff race before the playoffs is Daytona. And if people remember from the first Daytona race, the racing is nuts at Daytona. It is legitimate pack racing. We are 3 by 3 by 3 by 3. And that's the cutoff race before the playoffs. So if you have people on the cut line, not guaranteed in, looking on their way in, that is going to be crazy. It will be insane. Because with Eagle Rock, we have no clue how the points are going to shake up after Eagle Rock. Who knows? It could be the road racers gaining a little bit. And who knows how the points are actually going to look after race 7? Because, like I said, we're still going to be reviewing some clips. We're going to still be reviewing a handful of late race incidents that we saw. I know we talked with Vanquish a little bit on what happened between him and JJ. We're thinking what's going on is that pit wall might be a little bit glitched. Because from the perspectives that we saw, at least, we know there was 2 incidences with people in that pit wall. One being coming towards the checkered flag with JJ, and another a tiny bit before then. It was between Neo and Frodo. So looking at them a little bit, it seemed as if the wall itself might be a tiny bit glitched. Especially with JJ. Twig. JJ had room and didn't move over. Either way, we're going to look at it. Vanquish, he said if you guys think it's enough for a penalty, he'll take the penalty. He openly admitted that after the race. So we still need to look into that. We're going to look into Neo and Frodo. But overall, I know one penalty that could be guaranteed, and that could be a paint penalty that I saw on one driver, that they had the logo on the side of their car, but they didn't have the windshield banner. So there's probably going to be a point penalty coming their way. But then everything else, me, Cart, we need to talk over it. And now Razor can actually get a chance to talk with us as well. And so that can actually lead into the next thing that we're going to talk about outside of the actual racing, and that was that we officially acquired and merged with New England Racing League. RZX Razor is the owner of that league, or I should say was the owner of that league. We were talking, And at first, it was going to be pretty much Razer had interest to merge with another league, whether it be a bigger league or another league that was about his size. So he did have that interest. We talked, me, him, Cart, we were talking the other day, and pretty much it was, hey, if we merge, we actually see benefit for both of us. And we do get a little bit of benefit as a whole of, hey, even if you don't have that many guys showing up consistently, if we merge with you, that's still more people in the communities, and you still get to be in a position of pretty much a position of management, and it allows all of us to kind of work together more side by side with each other rather than two competing leagues talking with each other. Because in terms of the coordination, like for example, when we ran XRS versus JRL, that was a lot of coordination. That was a lot of coordination, and it ended up the XRS guys kept on showing up, but then the JRL guys, I don't know if it was just the time that we were running the races, it just wasn't convenient for them or anything like that, but slowly it started to die out more and more. So something like that takes a massive amount of coordination. In this merger, it pretty much makes it to where when you're putting the two leagues together, it's going to be coordinated, but it's going to be more articulated and a little bit easier now that both organizations are one. So with both organizations being one thing, I'm excited to see what we can actually do on it, on what we can actually talk about. I know the other day, Cart and Razer were already discussing a couple things of what we can do with the merger and different ideas of what we can actually bring to the table. And obviously continue to grow XRS to a number that we are satisfied with. Okay, so Twig asks, is it league versus league or just bringing more drivers? The league, pretty much we acquired Razer's league. So it's not league versus league. It is just flat out Razer is combining with us. So now his league is pretty much with us, and Razer will have the ability to run a series through XRS that will still be called XRS. Nothing in terms of our name is changing, but now Razer has been moved to an admin role, or should be moved to an admin role. I don't know if he actually has the role yet. I don't think he does, but Razer will be in the admin role. Extreme Razer series. I mean, maybe not that, but yeah, the merger is literally just the two leagues combining. And Razer, I believe he ran his leagues, if I'm not mistaken, Wednesday nights. He ran his league. So Wednesday nights, me and Cart, before even we were talking about with Razer, we were talking about if we do want to run two series side by side. We already like our primetime Sunday night spot right now. It's bringing in more guys. We have a lot of interest. We've been getting 16 plus people every week for the Mercuries every week now, and we love this. Me and Cart, we love this. We absolutely love the amount of guys showing up week after week and giving it their all. And obviously, we know that a lot of people have a shot because we've had 7 races and 7 different winners. So many people have opportunities to win. The points from pretty much second on down are so close that one race can really affect the point system, especially affect the point standings, considering where people can finish and all of that. So me and Cart, we're loving this. We're hoping that a lot of the drivers are loving this. Seeing actual fuller racing and fuller lobbies for XRS. We love this, and we want to grow XRS to a point where we can say, you know what, we have consistently enough guys showing up. Let's bring in a B lobby system, and let's bring in to where it's even more guys having the opportunity to fight for a single championship. That is something that we would love to reach. Those are heights that we are looking at for the league. And and we have a general idea on how we can keep running our stuff and how we can get to that position. But the real ideal thing is not to actively push for what we want. We need to push to the next step and not push all the way to the goal straight away. It's a step-by-step process. So, yeah, we love how many people are showing up, and combining with Razor, hopefully more of his guys are able to move from his server over into our server if they're not in there already. But essentially, if more guys in that Discord server move into our server, it grows our community and what we're trying to build. Recently, we changed the Discord to include a rivals, pretty much to include a rivals and tunes chat. That is meant really for you guys in the XRS Discord server to chat with each other, to share each other's times, and be like, hey, what tune that you use, what car do you think handles better if there's multiple different cars that can get those top rivals times. And the idea is just to have more people being engaged with it. So if you run rivals, if you're running rivals, take a little bit of time, screenshot it, screenshot your rivals time, post it in the proper chat of what class you were running in. Doesn't matter the track, you can just say whatever class it was and the track it was, and say, hey, this is the time that I ran from the ability, to pretty much the best of my ability, this is what I was able to run. And if other guys are like, hey, I like that time, and I want to eventually get to that point. Now you have more people conversing with each other. I know I put 2 basic YouTube videos, or those are 2 videos that I watched, and I learned more about Forza tuning, and how you can actually, when we run more open tunes, or when we run a series to where you need to tune your own car, we don't want that to be a turn away for a lot of drivers. We don't want it to be, hey, it's open tune, ooh, I'm going to turn the other way now because I don't know how to tune in Forza. That's why we're going to post these videos and guides, and hopefully the rivals chat, that is where you can work on it. So even if it's just one time a week that you take time to run a time in rivals, figure out the way you can tune your car just right, or learn how you can grab other community tunes. You can go to the leaderboards, grab the tune of the same car that you're running, and visualize and see, okay, so the more I'm tuning my car and the more I'm comparing it to this car, you can see what the different aspects of changing your car does, or changing the tune does to your car, and you get a better feeling and a better idea of actually running those times and running the way that, okay, then tuning just becomes easier once it's repetitive. So once that actually gets easier for you, you find that right formula that you like, run it in there, and you can run more of it. Now I see Rama in the Discord. Wait, Rama doesn't have a role. Let me give him driver role. There you go. What's this? The Rama just Nürburgring GP. He's 8th on the board. So, oh, and Rama, by the way, if you're watching, you would post that in the P class times. And then general discussion would be in the rivals chat, but that's okay. That's okay. So, that was put, yeah, so the rivals chat, that was all put in there. MVP. Oh my god. Y'all need to stop making me laugh in the Discord. Alright. Anyway. So, moving forward on other things that we're going to do and other things that we have discussed with Razor. I know we were discussing on when we want to run our races and everything like that. I did hear the idea that Razor and Cart were talking about. I wasn't there, but now hopefully later today, me and Cart can get a chance to discuss on, okay, like here's what we can go going forward. The next two series that we're going to run, one will be a longer series, the other one will be a shorter series, and it's most likely just going to be GT and Cutlass. That's what we have right now. That's what we have in mind right now. But who knows? We could talk a little bit more on trying to figure out, what is the best series and cars going forward. Because as of right now, for NASCAR in the new game, we only have the Mercury Cougars. And we only have the Cutlass car for NASCAR series. I would essentially love to bring in a third NASCAR series. But the question is, we don't know what car can actually work well. We don't want to default to the Monte Carlos or the Buick because I think enough people ran that in 7 and got tired of it. Because essentially that's just really old NASCAR, but the cars do not handle well at all. So you have that. A different series that has been discussed, there is a Buick, but it's the Trans Am. So the 1985 Buick Trans Am. That car, I know me and Cart have looked at. Excuse me. We've looked at the Ford Mustang Whistler. So pretty much it's the Mustang with the same design as the base Mercury Cougar. But I know that car is really, really tight. And it's probably tighter than the Cougar, so that would be involved in a lot of tuning, but we can probably get it to work. The IROC Camaro has been another car that me and Cart have looked at, because obviously IROC has been a series that has been ran in the past, and of course Razor types IROC. But yeah, IROC, that has been a car that we've looked at for another series. A similar car that we ran alongside the Cougar at one point in a couple exhibition races in Motorsport 7 was the Mazda RX-7 or XR7, something like that. We looked into that car, and this idea has been brought up, but I don't think we're actually going to go with it. But the Trans Am cars, the actual Trans Am cars, so the Mustang, the Challenger, the Corvette, and the Cadillac, rather than running a Trans Am series, which obviously didn't gain enough interest, maybe only running one of those cars and running it as a Challenger series, to where not the actual Dodge Challenger, but we run it as like a pilot challenge, to where everyone is in the same exact car. We make spec tunes for every track, and you're only running one car. So everyone is only running the Dodge, or everyone's only running the Mustang. So that idea has only ever been thought about and barely talked on, so I don't think we're actually going to do it. But the other cars that I mentioned, we have talked about on trying to bring in a third NASCAR series, and this is also leaving in question as well, will Forza add another car that is NASCAR based? Will they add a stock car that they have added in previous games? Will we get the 2017 Cup cars? If we get the 2017 Cup cars, at least give us more customization options to it. Okay, so, or if you can't get the current Cup cars approved via licensing, with iRacing holding the licensing rights, can you get something else other than the 2017 Cup cars? Alright, can you get something a tiny bit newer? Can you get like the last Gen 6 cars, which was what? That was 2021? 2021? Yeah, 2021. Can you get the 2021 Gen 6s? Or give us something interesting that's not a Gen 6. Could you give us the car of tomorrow? Could you give us the car of tomorrow, the Gen 5s? Whether it be the ones with the wing or the later ones that were developed without the wing. Can you give us the Gen 4? The mid to early 2000s Cup cars? I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in that. So, can you give us an actual NASCAR stock car that maybe necessarily isn't just the 2017 Cup car? Because if it's the 2017 Cup car, obviously we will try to run the Cup Series in that car because it is a NASCAR stock car. But it's what we ran for years and years on Forza's on Motorsport 7, and it's just people will get tired of it. It will be so tiring just bringing that car back. So if we could get something different that's also NASCAR, that would be ideal. Yeah, so next gen cars, okay, we get it. You're probably not going to get the licensing agreement because of iRacing making NASCAR 25. We get it. But if you can at least get us like the latest year, like give us a 2020, 2021. So, I don't know. Okay, I guess that is something I didn't consider, Twig. The physics in this game are very different from Motorsport 7 in terms of the way that you have to draft and stuff like that. So maybe if they do just bring back the 2017 Cup cars, they won't handle like they did in Motorsport 7, and we'll need to pretty much build them and redo them in a completely different way from what we needed to do in Motorsport 7. So, okay, maybe that is something to consider as well. But in terms of more customization options, I already liked the amount of customization ideas that we got in Motorsport 7, like the engine swapping and changing the tire rims and the widths. That I liked, but at the same time, I hate that we didn't have aero appearances changes. Like, I think it would be cool if we got a stock Gen 6 car, make it to where we can adjust the spoiler height. Okay, make it to where, do we want to have the massive 8-inch spoilers, or do we have a tiny 2-inch spoiler, like something like that? To where, do you want to give us a tiny spoiler, a big spoiler, something in the middle? I think that can be fun and exciting. The front bumpers, I know, didn't really change too often. But at least, hey, changing the size of the splitter in the front, that changes the downforce that you have. So allowing those aero appearances to be changed, that can also bring in more aesthetic, and it allows me, Kart, and now Razor to really change the cars even more rather than just tuning them. But yes, but as Twig is saying, side drafting is huge now. Yes, as we found out at Race 7, side drafting is huge. So, yeah, with side drafting being a major part of the game now, and bump drafting pretty much being nothing, you would need to drive those cars way differently. So yeah, as long as we get a NASCAR stock car, I'm good with it. I'm okay with it. And that's something that we can actually officially run as a Cup Series. So then that would make it to where the Cutlass becomes its own series, to where Cutlass stats going forward would be counted separately from the Cup Series. And then Mercury has already... the Mercuries already are their own series. So then that would give us the 3 concrete NASCAR series, and then we still run GT, and me and Kart have actually, talking more on GT, we've talked about running Touring Car. So we have talked about running Touring Car. We know Touring Car is really good. We know the cars are all fairly close to each other. And there's a lot of interest in terms of, there's a lot of community interest in Touring Car. We just don't know if there's enough XRS interest in Touring Car. Okay, GT, the first season that we ran in a while of GT, we barely had enough people to continuously run that series. Now I think we have a tiny bit more interest in GT with the drivers that we have involved. And maybe if we can make GT a little bit of a more comfortable series for a lot of our NASCAR guys, maybe we could bring in maybe we can bring in a handful of spec tunes or spec-tuned races for GT, to where it's like, all right, you can only run these 3 cars and these are the 3 tunes. So then it makes it a tiny bit easier for some of the NASCAR guys to get into GT. That idea has been talked about. I don't think we're actually going to do it because we still want GT to be as open tuning as possible. But Season 4 of GT will consist of more cars being allowed from the Season 3 list and a higher PI limit being allowed from the Season 3 PI limitations. So it has been talked about a little bit, but more than likely GT will be another 8 race schedule rather than a 10 race schedule. There's still going to be no playoffs, and it's going to be a straight sprint all the way to the end. We might talk about bringing in a different kind of bonus point system, but to be honest, we don't see any benefit in having more bonus points being involved when there's no playoffs. So there's no like points that you can gain now, but then it separates over. That, or we do try to bring in a playoff for GT. I don't know. So, but right now, there's still a lot that needs to be talked about, but GT more than likely will be another 8 race schedule with more cars, higher PI limit. Rules will overall be the same, and things of that nature. Cutlass, the schedule will more than likely, we want it to try and be Cutlass, we want to try and have Cutlass be a 15 race schedule this time around. We're aiming to have a 15 race Cutlass schedule, just like what we're doing with the Mercuries, them having a 15 race schedule, because it brings a nice balance. It brings it to where we can have a 10 race regular season, we have a 4 race playoffs, and then we have a 1 race championship. It brings in a nice system. 15 weeks is not terribly long. It might be on the longer side in comparison to what other leagues run. But we think with the playoffs, it brings in a good balance into that system. So essentially, for all the NASCAR series that we run, we would love it to be 15 races, each one of them, so then it's the same congruent 10 race regular season, 4 race playoffs, 1 championship. Yeah, okay, so Razor, you thought the point system for GT was fine for Season 3. And I'm sure a lot of people felt that way too, that it was okay, so yeah, but then bringing in a playoff for GT, that would be interesting, but also weird. To try and do that in only 8 races. But anyway, Rama, keep the GTPI either way. It was or just GT multiplayer regulated. The PI limit for Season 3 of GT was 833. More than likely, it will be increased to 835, which is that is what I believe what multiplayer is regulated to, 835 if I'm not mistaken. So 835, but with more cars being allowed this time, I need to try and figure out, okay, is one car just way better performing than another car at 835 PI to where it just can't be allowed? Or like pretty much I want to try and get the car list. I want it to be bigger than the car list in Season 3, but I don't want it to be, hey, if I allow like this car, everyone's going to pick that car, right? And what I've heard and what I've asked is apparently the strongest GT car as of right now is the Lexus GT3 that was added. No Viper, Lambo, Jetta, Expo, or Lexus, according to Twig. Lambo. Any Lambo? Because I know there's like 3 technical Lambos. The Viper I get, the Jetta I get, the Expo, yeah, and then the Lexus I knew. But then the Lambo, I know there's like a 2018 Lambo, a 2015 Lambo, and then there's like that really weird P-Class Lambo. I know that one. Hell no, not that one. Not allowing that one. But either Lambo, the 2018 or the 2015 Lambo, You can use the Essenza, but I don't know how it would be in private multiplayer. Okay. But yeah, already pretty much what Twig had said. I pretty much was not going to allow any of those except for the Viper. Because the Viper was allowed in the previous seasons. One of those Lambos is fast, but the other one has cracked acceleration. Okay. So, yeah, the Viper was allowed in the previous season, and didn't really seem that busted. It didn't really seem that busted from what we were running because people who were in Porsches and the Corvettes, they were keeping up with the Viper, and they were better than the Viper. Viper can be goaded in the right hands. That I can believe. Yeah, that I can believe that the Viper can be goaded in the right hands. So, but hey, this is how we can talk a little bit more often, figure out a nice car list. I already have a car list that I think is okay, but obviously I would love to actually talk with some of you guys on it and be like, hey, I'm not that experienced in this GT fielding thing, but if I can get as much feedback as I can from you guys determining the cars, and if we can get enough feedback in determining the interest level of how many drivers we can actually get to run GT, that will give us, that will give me, Kart, now Razor, it will give us a better idea of what cars that can be allowed, what tracks, the length of the schedules, and things like that. But yeah, so all of those things we're going to consider with your guys' feedback. I know, I know one thing that has been talked about with me and Kart right now is shortening the length of the races from 1 hour, because right now the race lengths are 1 hour with no cautions. So they're 1 hour in length if we don't have a single caution. Okay, 1 hour in length without a single caution. We were thinking, since we're generally going to get at least 1, 2, or 3 cautions per race, and so far that's what we've gotten in Mercury. We've gotten at least 3 cautions per race. We were thinking about shortening the green flag length if the race goes green all the way through. We were thinking about shortening it to around a 45-minute race. So it's 45-minute races with no cautions, but with the amount of cautions that we've been getting per race, that the race might be an hour in length. So we were talking about potentially shortening the races just a little bit and shortening them by 15 minutes to 45 minutes. That makes it to where potentially more people can show up and more outsiders can be interested in the series with it being shorter, under an hour races, because now you don't need to devote that much time if you really wanted to. And probably going forward, we're going to enforce Kart. Kart and I, we noticed that, hey, there's technically a part in the rules that says we're supposed to start qualifying 10 minutes before the end of practice. So we're supposed to have 50-minute practices instead of the 1-hour practices. That we are thinking we're going to enforce going forward. So going forward, it's going to be 50-minute practices. So So if the race is supposed to start at 7 p.m., well, 7 p.m. my time, which is Central. So 8 Eastern. If the races are supposed to start at 8 Eastern, instead of starting qualifying at 8 Eastern, we're going to start qualifying at 7:50 Eastern. So 7:50 Eastern is when we're going to start qualifying, and also it gives us a little bit more time if we need to restart the lobbies, because we're going to have to do that, because lovely Forza doesn't allow us to transition well from qualifying to the race. So there's all that. But yeah, we were pretty much, and also on top of that, in the future, potentially shortening the race distances from 1 hour green flag to 45 minutes green flag. We're probably going to do this with GT. We're probably going to shorten the distance of the races to where they're not 1 hour in length. I mean, we already shortened the distances of the GT races when we didn't have as many people. So hopefully, if we shorten the distance a little bit, with who knows how many people are going to go into GT, it could make it a little bit more sprint style rather than endurance style for GT, which could be something that can be interesting and more exciting for us to do. But yeah, more than likely GT, we will bring in shorter races, roughly 45 minutes if there's no cautions. Moving forward in our current season, practice will end 10 minutes earlier. So practice will end 10 minutes earlier. Qualifying will begin 10 minutes earlier. So it's just going to allow us to give us more buffer between restarting the race, restarting a lobby, switching to a new lobby because Forza is fantastic. Um, so giving us a little bit more time to do that. So that we're going to enforce going forward. When we run GT, we'll most likely run the smaller races, so GT will more than likely be right after the Mercuries. So if we then run GT right after the Mercuries towards the end of summer, we get a better idea of if the shorter races is a better idea to then bring into the NASCAR series. To where the NASCAR series, we could potentially shorten the races a little bit. Maybe not as much as GT, shortening it to 45 minutes green flag all the way through, but maybe just shortening it by a couple laps, making it 50-minute races without yellows. That can bring in a little bit of a better idea for us of having our events be either exactly 2 hours in length from start of practice to checkered flag, or potentially shortening the entire event to an hour and a half. So gives us a better idea of how much time should a person take to racing when we start practice all the way through. Right now we're approaching an hour on the stream. We're a couple minutes away from an hour, and I think I have yapped enough. So after we finish Eagle Rock Club circuit is when I will have the next bi-weekly update stream, which technically it won't be bi-weekly, but it'll be talking about the previous two races. So yeah, talked about race 5 and 6. Race 7 was just completed. Talked a little bit more about what we can do for GT and Cutlass and other cars going forward. So very nice. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and everyone who was paying attention in the chat and actually chatting, asking me questions. This is perfectly great, perfectly fine for actually these streams. I want to have more engagement to where we can talk a little bit more, because I know obviously we don't have all the time in the world during the race weekends to actually talk on this. So thanks to all of you who tuned into the stream, all of you who chatted, who followed. Obviously I saw Rama, he followed, so that's good. But yeah, so that will conclude this broadcast. Next week, more than likely, is when we will then start the next stream. So then we can go over races 7 and 8 and then talk a little bit more on hopefully other things that we have solidified for GT and Cutlass and whatever car we run moving forward. Alright, so thanks for watching today, and I will see y'all next week.